Alright, let's talk about John Millington Synge, one of the central figures of the Irish literary revival and someone who helped bring the raw voice of rural Ireland to the modern stage. Synge was born in 1871 into a wealthy Anglo-Irish family, which is often asked in exam. You'd think such privilege would make him distant from ordinary people, but actually his heart and writing focus deeply on working-class Irish Catholics, their struggles, their superstitions, and their beautiful lyrical way of speaking. He was a sickly child, mostly schooled at home, and though he first studied music at Trinity College Dublin, his path soon changed. After moving to Germany to study composition, he gave up music for literature. Everything changed when he met W.B. Yeats in Paris, who famously told him, "Go to the Aran Islands, live there, find your true voice." And Synge did exactly that. Those windswept islands became his creative homeland. When he returned to Ireland, he became one of the founders of the Abbey Theatre, along with Yeats and Lady Gregory, another major exam point. His works blended poetic language with the harsh realism of peasant life. And though his career was short, he died in 1909, his influence was enormous. Let's start with one of his most moving one-act plays, Riders to the Sea, first performed in 1904. It's set in the Aran Islands, and yes, that setting has been asked in exam. The play captures the tragic rhythm of island life, where the sea, both beautiful and cruel, rules everything. Synge actually based it on a real story he heard about a drowned man found washed ashore in Donegal. The play opens with Kathleen and Nora, two sisters, discovering pieces of clothing that might belong to their brother Michael, who's been lost at sea. Their mother, Moria, has already lost 5 sons and fears the sea will take her last one, Bartley. Despite her warnings, Bartley sets out on his horse to the mainland and, tragically, he too is claimed by the waves. The play's dialogue is deeply poetic, written in Hiberno English, the local dialect of the Aran Islands, and that's another exam keyword. The final scene is unforgettable. When Bartley's body is brought home, Moria, broken but calm, says, "They're all gone now, and there isn't anything more the sea can do to me." And then, quietly accepting the inevitability of death, she adds, "No man at all can be living forever." Both these lines have been asked in exam. Through this short, stark tragedy, Synge gives us a timeless image of endurance of people living between faith and fatalism, facing nature's indifference with quiet dignity. Now, let's move to his most controversial masterpiece, The Playboy of the Western World, first performed at the Abbey Theatre on the 26th of January 1907. When it premiered, it caused literal riots. Audiences shouted, protested, and even threw things at the stage. And yes, that riot has been asked in exam multiple times. The play is set in a village pub in County Mayo on Ireland's western coast. The story follows Christy Mahone, a nervous young man who bursts into the tavern claiming he's killed his father. His confession shocks everyone, but instead of horror, the villagers are thrilled. They celebrate him as a hero, a sort of rebel legend. The pub owner Michael James Flaherty and his spirited daughter Pegin Mike are especially fascinated. Pegin falls for Christie's wild charm, while her timid fiancé Sean Keogh sulks on the sidelines. Christie quickly becomes a local celebrity, winning races, impressing women, and basking in his newfound fame. But then comes the twist. Christie's father, old Mahon, shows up alive. Suddenly, the hero becomes a liar and a coward. Desperate to win back the villagers' respect, Christie really does attack his father again, this time for real. Yet, when old Mahon survives a second time and returns, Christie's glory collapses completely. The townsfolk turn on him, ready to hang him for his supposed crimes. But Christie, transformed by everything he's been through, declares his independence and walks away with defiant pride. As he leaves, Pegin Mike delivers that famous closing line, "I've lost the only playboy of the Western world." And that's what the title means. The playboy is the dreamer, the storyteller, the man who turns lies into legends. Synge's play exposes how people crave drama and myth even in their everyday lives. So, to sum up, Synge's riders to the sea tragedy, sea and fate. The playboy of the Western world comedy, myth and rebellion. Both written in poetic, local Irish speech inspired by the Aran Islands. Through these plays, Synge gave voice to the soul of rural Ireland, its humor, its suffering, and its ancient rhythm of life and death. Even Yeats said that in Synge's work, we hear the first music of the new Irish nation. Alright, let's talk about Sean O'Casey, the brilliant Irish playwright who turned the struggles of Dublin slums into unforgettable theatre. O'Casey was born in 1880 into a lower middle class Protestant family in Dublin, and that detail about his background has been asked in exam. His father died when he was just 6, and the family soon fell into poverty. He had very little formal education but made up for it by reading everything he could get his hands on. By 14, he was already working in manual jobs, and from those experiences grew the authentic voice that would later define his plays. Now, what makes O'Casey stand out is his unique ability to blend tragedy and comedy, the laughter and tears of life existing side by side. He writes about the Irish poor, about revolution, and about how ordinary people suffer when politics turns violent. His first major success came in 1923 with The Shadow of a Gunman performed at the Abbey Theatre, which supported much of his work. That play captures the atmosphere of the Irish War of Independence and the way revolutionary politics intrude on the lives of Dublin's tenement dwellers. It's been repeatedly asked in exam as his debut play. Then came his best-known work, Juno and the Paycock in 1924, followed by The Plough and the Stars in 1926, together forming what we now call O'Casey's Dublin trilogy. Let's pause on Juno and the Paycock, one of the finest tragicomedies ever written about working-class life. It's set in the Dublin slums during the Irish Civil War, and it explores both the humor and heartbreak of a struggling family. The play follows the Boyle family, with Juno Boyle, the strong-willed mother, holding everything together while her husband, Captain Jack Boyle, prefers drinking with his friend Joxer daily. That contrast between Juno's realism and Jack's foolish pride lies at the heart of the play, and Juno's character as the pillar of strength has been asked in exam. When the family hears that they're about to receive an inheritance, Jack borrows money and spends lavishly. But the will turns out to be faulty, a result of poor drafting by a law student named Bentham, and the fortune collapses. Bentham disappears, leaving Mary, the daughter, pregnant and abandoned. Their son Johnny, haunted by his involvement in revolutionary violence, is later killed by Republican soldiers. By the end, the family is ruined. Juno, realizing she can no longer depend on her husband, leaves him to make a better life for herself and Mary. Jack, meanwhile, sinks into alcoholism and delusion. The play ends with a haunting mix of irony and sorrow, a tragic picture of strength amid decay. This play was later adapted into a film by Alfred Hitchcock, another frequent exam point. Next comes The Plough and the Stars, written in 1926 and also part of his Dublin trilogy. The play is set against the Easter Rising of 1916, when Irish nationalists rebelled against British rule. When it premiered at the Abbey Theatre, it actually caused nationalist riots. That too is often asked in exam because audiences thought O'Casey was mocking patriotism. But what he was really doing was showing the human cost of rebellion through ordinary lives. The main characters, Jack and Nora Clitheroe, live in a tenement much like the Boyles. Jack, a former member of the Irish Citizen Army, is called back to fight even though Nora, who is pregnant, pleads with him not to go. Jack is eventually killed, and Nora loses both her husband and her baby. The tragedy leaves her mentally shattered, and she is cared for by Bessie Burgess, a Protestant neighbor who later dies from a sniper's bullet, a moment that powerfully ends the play. The Plough in the Stars isn't about heroes, it's about how ordinary people pay the price for political dreams. That's why it's considered one of the most profound anti-war plays ever written. Across all his works, O'Casey gives voice to Ireland's working class, exposing both their humour and their heartbreak. His plays are filled with women like Juno, practical, moral, unbreakable, and men like Boyle, full of bluster and escape. Other plays worth remembering for exam include Within the Gates, The Silver Tazzy, The Star Turns Red, Red Roses for Me, Behind the Green Curtains. O'Casey lived until 1964, and by then his name had become synonymous with Irish theatre itself. His works stand as a bridge between the realism of Synge and the social commentary of modern drama. Or, as one critic beautifully said, O'Casey turned Dublin's slums into a stage and its people into poetry.